let's just start and let's just see what kind of journey we're taking on.
I think calling this discussion of Steins Gate a journey is a very good way to describe this, because I legitimately don't know how this is going to go or in what directions it's going to branch out into.
You know, that's part of the experience. It's a journey.
Yeah, journey, branching paths, you know.
Okay, I'm already getting a little triggered. Like, we haven't even started the discussion yet.
So, where do you want to start? Because I could rant for a while, but do you want to talk about?
I know you could.
Do you want to talk about what's good in the show?
Well, I don't want to. Here's what I don't want to happen. I don't want to talk about the good things and then the bad things.
Yeah. I get that, and I
get the feeling that the way this operates, it will probably be lopsided.
No, I'm gonna breathe in. I'm gonna breathe out. I'm gonna try and be as objective as possible.
Yeah, do your 7-11 breaths. 7 counts in, 11. You breathe in for 7 counts, and then hold it, and then breathe out for 11 counts.
I've never heard of that before.
Okay.
All right, but I guess that's the thing. Okay.
But I think it would be good to just get some good stuff out of the way. I can get into my ranting stuff, and then we can probably finish up with some good stuff too. Because I do have good things to say about this show. I just also have.
But it's not a bad show.
I know. I'm trying not to say it.
Please just don't say it. That just puts it in like the Sword Art Online category. Can we not?
Yeah, the Steins Gate is definitely not in Sword Art Online category.
It's not even close, really.
Like this is one of the highest rated shows on Mal, I think.
What is it? Like, what is it?
It's
like number 3, 4, 5, 7?
Yeah, that's
I don't know. I think it's right below. It's ranked number 4.
That's one of the reasons why.
It is 4. Huh.
I wanted to start the show, and I'm glad that Matt, you put it on the list, because it is one of the highest rating shows, and people. Yeah. Nathan, I've never heard anybody talk about the plot. I've only heard people reference the show, and they're like, "That's a good show," which is kind of a cool thing. Yeah. That like nobody wanted to get into spoilers or anything.
Yeah.
Probably, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, there is a lot of things in the show that are very spoiler heavy.
On top of that,
if you have to talk about the show, it's going to be spoilery.
Exactly, because it does try to delve into a lot of complicated shit, and so because of that, I think like anything you say could possibly be a spoiler or misleading.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I don't know. It feels like most people that are going to watch this have probably seen the show.
That's probably true.
But I mean, I guess at the same time, you know, I think we have collectively watched a lot of anime, just, you know, from our collective experiences, and yet none of us had seen it.
That's true. I don't know. A lot of people that I work with that are typically like they'll watch anime every now and then. It's not really always their thing. Even they've seen this show.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, I probably already know the answer to this, but did you ask them what they thought of the show? Or
yeah, the first guy I talked to said he's kind of like this, but not to throw him under the bus, but whenever I know you know my feelings on the show, but I had not said anything to him, and he was like, "Oh, Steins Gate? Oh yeah, that's overhyped. It's okay." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then the other person that I talked to was like, it was funny because he was like, "Oh, I love that show," and I'm like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's such a shit show, but I love it." I was like,
God.
That's some very mixed opinions. You guys sure there's not something in the air down there that's affecting your brain?
Us here Texans, we don't like them. They're time traveling.
Fuck microwaves and time travel. We just toss stuff outside and it warms right up.
Maybe we like the show so much that we tried to replicate it, where we ripped the door off of a microwave and just released microwave radiation inside of our houses.
Look,
fried us.
After I finished the show, I couldn't even like use the microwave for a day because I was just like fucking paranoid, or not paranoid really. I was just so.
It's just so uncanny.
I just looked at my microwave and said, I can't do this right now. And then walked away. Because, I mean, I did the same thing because we got a bunch of bananas in the freaking kitchen as well.
Oh, Christ.
So I just can't walk into the kitchen.
Why would you ever microwave a banana in the first place, though? Like, I get why they did it for a test, but I think Mayuri was, like, legitimately excited to be microwaving bananas. And I was like, what?
I mean, we're all scientists on the inside.
Yeah, okay, sure. I think I'm of the opinion of the first coworker you talked to. Like, this is a really good show. I do think it's overhyped. I don't necessarily think it needs to be the fourth most popular show on Mal, etc. I do think it deserves like a solid 8 out of 10.
At the same time, we don't always agree with Mal, anyways.
No, we don't, and I'm not saying that that's like a gospel metric to go by.
Yeah.
God help us all if we just went by that, because then Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood would be, the
best show ever
quality.
made. Yeah.
Which, granted, it's still really good, but that's beside the point.
Right. It's like, to be fair, it is a great show. It's just, is it really the best anime ever made? Is kind of the thing.
Right.
Well, then you get into the discussion about best anime ever made.
And it's subjective.
Yeah, and whatever. It's a subjective argument anyway. So.
Yeah. Matt, you rated this about a 9?
Yeah, I gave it a 9. I would actually argue that I gave it even a little bit higher than a 9 in my mind. Like, it's not quite like a 9.5, but it's like somewhere above a 9, below 9.5. So just somewhere in there, that general kind of area.
I thought you were going to tell me that you wanted to rate it higher, but I got under your skin or something.
No. No. It does get under my skin a little bit, but it just... we'll get into that later.
So,
not a big deal.
I guess, why did you rate it so high?
Why did I rate it so high?
Yeah.
And, okay. Basically, I thought it was, it was an emotional roller coaster for me, and that's not the only reason I rated it high. I think there's a lot to be said for the emotional level that this show kind of got to me on.
I would actually agree with you. What I don't like about the show has nothing to do with that, because I felt that the times when they went emotional, they did it very well. The acting was solid. The animation was great. I truly felt in the moment for the emotional moments. Those were good. I felt that those definitely were a strong point in this show, and that surprised me.
Very much so.
It really surprised me. I didn't expect going in for this to be an incredibly emotional ride.
Yeah, I didn't either. But the emotional impact that this show had on me was just really, it was really, I came out of the show and I was just like, I don't know if I can even watch that again, because it's not going to be the same. And not only that, afterwards, I was just looking at everything. The fact that I was getting freaking triggered by the microwave and bananas is the fact that showed that it was just affected my brain so much that I was just like, oh my God. I don't know if I told one of you this before the podcast, but actually I went to work the next day because I watched the anime before I went to bed. And then I woke up and went to work, and I was just traumatized the entire time I was at work. Because I just couldn't stop thinking about the show. And, all the shit that happened. I was just like, oh my God, I'm a wreck. It just really got to me. And I think it takes a great deal of, just sheer impact in order to just reach me on that level. Because there's not many shows out there that can even do that. And I feel like this show just had a lot of just good elements combined. The characters were great. The directing was good. Well, it's subjective right now. This is me.
This is you. Sorry.
Yeah. I just thought that the scenario writing was just really, it really spoke to me, and that's what I liked about it.
And I think something that really hit for me was I was astounded by how well they were able to adapt this from a visual novel, because I've watched a good number of visual novel adaptations, and often it feels as though something is sort of lost in translation.
Yeah.
But when I was watching this, in a lot of ways, it really did feel like I was reading through the visual novel itself. Like a lot of the ways that it handled some of the time jumps here and there, and some of the ways that it just handled itself with the pacing and the way in which it revealed certain elements of the story did, feel very familiar in a sort of visual novel kind of format. And it was fascinating to me because I've never seen an adaptation of a visual novel that quite had those characteristics about it. Nothing really felt as though this is a, true to form media transplant of this text. And
Yeah, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No.
Okay. I just didn't want to interrupt you. Yeah, I would have to say that out of all the visual novel adaptations I've seen, that this show, like for example, I watched like Grisaya, and I read the visual novel of that, and it just I felt like the Grisaya anime didn't even like come close to capturing the essence of what that all. Yeah.
Yeah, whenever I played it through with you two after watching a few episodes of the anime, like I wasn't sold on the anime, and then I played through what I saw of the visual novel, and I was like, this is actually like, just as far as like plot and dialogue was like so much better.
Yeah, visual novels have a very unique kind of dialogue aspect to them, and the way just the dialogue is written. I mean, like it's very introspective. There's a lot of monologuing usually in visual novels. It's the protag just thinking about things. And just experiences of that thing, of the like. This show is kind of interesting. I played just a tad bit of the visual novel, just enough, just to kind of get the experience. And I would have to say that overall, like Steins Gate it's a pretty good adaptation of a visual novel. It feels very much like a visual novel when you're watching the show. And so when I started playing the novel, I was like, yeah, this is very familiar. This is very how I would expect this to be. This is very dialogue heavy, very detailed oriented. And I'm always worried about adaptations of visual novels because there's a lot of sometimes subtle details that can just get lost. And a lot of adaptations just skip over them or rush through them or whatever.
Because they don't have the time, they don't have the budget, just different reasons why that might be. Especially because visual novels are long.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's difficult to, adapt 50 plus hours worth of, actual, just straight dialogue into, if it's lucky, a 2-core.
Right, because sometimes they have to adapt 50 plus hours into 6 with a 1-core, and it's or less than 6 technically, and it's like that. Yeah, there's just no way.
So that was one of the things that really stood out to me. It really had that kind of feel to it.
The mystical feel, yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to describe. It's like
I would say it's a lot of, because it sets
anime umami.
It's very savory. I would say that it did a good job of establishing very early on a sense of mystery, and you're wondering about what's going to happen or what is happening. And then as it keeps going forward, they add more layers and layers to that mystery, and they do a very good job of holding off on revealing those until much later. And then, it's back to back. You start getting a lot of twists and turns, and then the second half of the show really takes off, and it's good. And I thought that was well done. At the same time, that's also why I wasn't a big fan of the first 11 episodes. It felt very much like just 11 episodes of setup, um, which is kind of similar to a lot of visual novels, is it not? Where you get through your main core path and then you have your divergent paths typically.
Yeah, it kind of depends on the visual novel. Some are structured in that way, where there is a main line that you have to go through first, and then you can go to branching.
Mm-hmm.
Some do have just like a bunch of branches available from the get-go, but yeah, more or less.
Yeah. Some of the visual novels I've played, I think like the first 11 episodes kind of reminds me of like that common route where you have to like play through all the stuff to get to the like real, like the real, I don't want to say the real decision making, but it's, I mean, that's kind of what it is though. It's like where shit starts happening, I guess. And you have to start like thinking about things and like why these things are happening and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's like they lay down some hints and pieces for the first 11 episodes, but in all honesty, I think that very much was probably a direct translation of the original Steins Gate visual novel in the sense that it was a very long duration of setup for a payoff. It was just, for me personally, it was like 11 episodes seemed like so much setup in order to actually get to the second half of the show where you get to the payoff. That's how I felt about it. And it's like, I guess if I had gone in expecting, well, this is going to be a long run, this is a visual novel adaptation where they're actually taking their time, maybe if I had given it more patience. But there was my own personal reasons why my patience started to dry up as it went on, but I'll get to that later. I have a question for you, though, Matt.
Sure.
Because what I thought was interesting whenever I found out that this was a visual novel, I didn't know originally, are there really dead ends in the visual novel? I don't know how much you've played, but I thought what was interesting about the series is that because it has to do with time travel, it was a lot of him reaching a dead end and then realizing that and restarting, just like you would in a game. So I was wondering if the story continued and then he just reset, or if it was that you reached dead ends and you hit the restart and that game mechanic was just a part of the story.
Well, I'm not that really far in the visual novel to know about that. From what I know about how this visual novel operates is that there's a lot of branching paths, and what everyone made it sound like was later on that, and by everyone I just mean like the comments that I read on Reddit or whatever, it made it seem like that the decisions that you made did affect kind of how the game progressed. So you could well, that's how all visual novels work. But it's particularly in this case where if you wanted to time travel, you would send a message, and then you would have the option whether to send that message or not send the message. So you could have like all sorts of different routes that would happen, or that you would have basically direct control over the events that are happening.
Okay, because you're directly influencing.
If you're going back in time, or how you're going back in time, or what.
Yeah, what timeline you'd be ending up on.
Yeah, so.
In the same way that our main character gets to using different D-mails in order to jump between the different timelines.
Yeah.
I just called him Okabe. I refuse to call him by his fucking nickname.
God, that's some bitterness.
Chill out of there, Morton.
I'll even do the dramatic Halloween Kyoma.
Nope. Yeah. Anyways. Okay, so that's interesting.
It's fun.
I am interested because if they actually use that to their advantage, where I don't know, where you hit a dead end and then it asks you to restart, and then the game kind of plays into like that's actually a part of your character's story and he remembers those events, even though you hit the restart button, so technically it goes back in the save. That would be like Metal Gear Solid levels of cool.
Yeah, I feel like if they utilize this visual novel mechanic the way that I think that the people are describing it, if that's the way it actually is, then that is really cool for a visual novel.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because in that case, if it works, at least the way that I explained it, it reminds me a lot of the Fear boss from Metal Gear Solid 3, where if you don't know to use the capsule in your teeth, you actually go back and continue to retry until you figure it out and break the loop and get out of there. And that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
So cool. So, Zach, what did you rate the show?
I gave it an 8. I feel like I could have given it a 9, and we'll see how that goes by the end of this. I don't know. Like a lot of what I had to say as far as qualifications for my rating go is very similar to a lot of what Matt said. It really succeeds in making a cast of characters that, for me, is very memorable. It felt like
I'll agree with
all
that.
of the major side characters and main characters that they put into the show were very fleshed out, and it was a continual development of their character, because even up to the last few episodes, I was still learning new things about these characters, and it didn't feel as though they were plot points that were like, well, we're going to throw this in because we can. It was
never
actual
felt random.
developments. Yeah, and everything felt as though they had telegraphed enough information beforehand for things, big revelations for me to be like, okay, that's odd, but I can see where that came from. Things of that nature. I felt like they did a good job of actually making a very, I guess, believable cast of characters. A very living sort of ecosystem.
For the most,
I could see that.
For the most part, I would absolutely agree with that. I would say that one of the strongest points in this show is the characters. I have my own hangups about the main character himself, but like the cast of characters is fantastic. And when you think about it, there's only like 6 of them that really matter, and then 4 that we really only major see at any given that actually, for the most part, directly influence almost every single decision.
Right.
And it's like, because we dedicate so much, like 25 episodes to just these characters instead of making a huge cast, or and we have so much time to do it, I felt like the show did a really good job of using that time to flesh out every single one of these characters. That was super cool.
Yeah, they really utilized that characters well.
Yeah. And I feel like, in large part, even though I had some issues with some of the time travel theory that was used and such, I thought the way that they largely handled it, again, felt like, okay, you've convinced me enough to get me to go along with the ride for this. And I thought it was fascinating too that they used like the whole John Titor thing from like back in the early 2000s as a sort of base for this, because I had actually heard of this shit beforehand.
I had too, yeah.
And so I was like, are you for real? Like, this is how this is going to go? Because I thought it was a neat little like mention at first, but then when it became such an integral part of the story, I was like, wow, that's a really cool way to actually tie in something that I actually have some previous stock in, some cultural knowledge of, and to sort of adapt that into its own, universe of story.
Yeah,
it was a really neat idea.
I thought it was super cool, especially because, like, I don't know, the John Titor thing is one of those like mythos from the internet that you just kind of stumble upon. It's like, of recent note, you get like the creepypastas with Slenderman and different things like that people start to pass around as if they're actual mythological beasts that the story's been around for a while. But like John Titor was one of those that like was very mysterious. People didn't know who he was, and all of a sudden this person just says, I'm from the future, and here's a whole bunch of stuff about me and about the future. And it was really cool to see like people try to prove and disprove the guy online, and then I guess for somebody in Japan to see and be like, that's fucking cool, let's make an entire show about that. Like that was I thought that was super cool.
Yeah. Or to at least use it as like a basis for
part
of the story.
I shouldn't say that the entire thing's about John Titor, but it's very much about the characters themselves, but like you said, use it as basis.
Yeah. I actually never heard of John Titor before I watched this show.
It's totally fine too. It's one of those things that like it was big in 2000, 2001, and then it kind of died off. I only randomly stumbled across it at sometime in high school. It was like and at that point everything had just died off. Like I only randomly found it. I don't even know how.
Yeah. This show has a interesting usage of just pop culture, by the way. Like,
Oh yeah.
I won't really go too far into it. But
okay.
there's a lot of interesting just kind of like references. I mean, they do the whole like memes. There's memes all over the place.
But what I
like,
like about it is that there's unlike other shows where they might be added in after the fact. It's like the memes in this show were very much intentional because it's based around a whole bunch of fucking nerds from. I think they say @channel, but it's really 2chan, isn't it?
it's I mean, it's clearly what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of like just random anime references. There's pop culture references.
Mm-hmm.
There's just memes and shit. Yeah, there's all that crap, and I thought that was just interesting. It's interesting when I see shows use those in an actual kind of, not just as a comedy joke kind of thing. I guess like
Yeah.
it's just not thrown in there just for the sake of it.
Right. Like it actually felt like it was again developing a sort of living universe of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's like the difference between using it as a joke or using it as a plot point, rather than in this case, the story is actually a part of that culture.
Yeah.
And that in that culture itself of like that whole of all the people back then of like internet, just 2chan and message boards and memes and different things like that. It's like that's what directly influences a lot of the show. I mean, a lot of the thought process on time travel that these guys have in the first place is because they were enthralled in all that nerdy stuff online.
Yeah. I just thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it? I think most of what its storytelling arsenal is, I think it's utilized well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so
A little bit of
what
an
are we talking
awkward
about
pause.
next?
Well, I mean, a little bit of an awkward pause, but yeah. So like we went through, I guess with no being around the bush, we went through Matt and Zach. If you want to get on like what I felt about the show and different things like that, I can get into that. I'll probably be ranting for a bit. Forgive me.
Oh, well, okay, hold on. Just don't rant too fast.
I won't.
Please.
And I'll try to I'll try to pine it down. I had my own sense of emotional roller coaster around this show.
Well, hold on. Before you do that, like, what did you like have anything that you wanted to talk about that you liked in the show, or you wanted to save that, or
Oh,
whatever?
that I liked in the show. It's a bit random, and there's a lot of very small things that I felt were good in the show, that I just picked on, and I was like, that's nice. That's really nice. I actually really liked, along with some really nice character designs and stuff like that. There was two things that stood out to me that I really enjoyed. That were just small things. The first one is that it's a show. Technically, they're teenagers, but they're adults. Like they're over the age of 18. We're not just dealing with high schoolers. I appreciate that because there's so few shows where the main cast is actually like either college age or just adults in general.
And I it's funny that you say that because you said this with what I think it was Barakamon that we talked about this, and I also said I'm going to say the same thing. Is that we talk about a lot of shows that feature adult characters.
Well, it's because I prefer them, Matt. I don't mind watching a show about high schoolers, but typically whenever you make a show about high school, understandably you'll put a lot of emotion and teen angst in there, or you'll play by what high schoolers will act and behave as. For the most part, this cast of characters, with the exception of the main character, are actually, they all act very mature and they have fun. Yeah, they goof off. Yeah, they'll be silly, but it's very nice to have characters that behave in a relatively mature fashion. And I don't know, I appreciate it. And maybe it's just because I'm around the same age group technically from like 18 to 25 that I can feel a little bit more empathy for the characters. I just appreciate those in the show, especially because I've watched so much anime that we haven't talked about that they're just high schoolers.
Yeah, and I wasn't trying to undermine your point.
Yeah,
I was just saying that,
I guess,
it seems like we say that every podcast, and it's like I feel like
I guess that's true. But it's something I appreciated, and like I said, I appreciated that for the most part the main characters actually behaved in a very mature fashion, and they would stop and think about things before just rushing in and acting upon something. They would discuss it beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
So it was cool. The other thing that I appreciated, which I don't know if you guys noticed or not, was the transitions in this show were fucking cool. Like, they had a lot of really neat, like, let's get to the next scene kind of things. It was like there was one very early on in which one of the characters closes the door, and in the same action of closing the door and you hear the thud, it immediately scene changes to where Karisu like thuds down a like thick stack of paper onto a desk. And then I was trying to think, there was a bunch of other ones that were really good. There's a lot that have to do with the main character's phone, because he's constantly on it, whether fake talking into it or whether he's actually in a phone call or a text, where he'll snap the phone close and then it like snaps to show him in a different scene with the phone still in his hand, and then we look up from it and stuff like that.
It uses a lot of really nice sort of scene transitional techniques that you see in a lot of really highly rated films, things of that nature.
Yes. And I greatly appreciated that. I thought that was very well done. And I think it helped a lot too, because where we're constantly switching between, whenever he's within a timeline, we're not getting every single moment and every single second of the day. We're hitting the highlights and getting towards the end until he decides to jump to a different timeline or go back in time. And so it helped to have something to really keep that pace going. And I appreciated that. And I thought that was very well done. I wanted to applaud the show on that. I also felt, personally, a lot of things got muddled midway through the show. I didn't feel like a lot of the time travel stuff was landing for me. And I wanted to be more invested in the characters, but I was finding myself a little bit more not. But then by the time it hit, I think around like episode 1920 or something like that, from then on I was completely invested in the show, more so than I had been well before that, like any of the other episodes. I thought the way that they worked towards the end and like mounted everything on top of each other until we finally reached that resolution, that was beautiful. That was very well done, and I have to applaud the show on that. I thought that they did a really good job on that.
Oh yeah.
So like we're totally down for spoilers, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I guess this is going to become the spoiler part of the cast now.
Yeah. Okay. So it kind of sounds like you sort of checked out of it when they started going into the Mayuri death loops.
No, actually, sort of. Yes and no.
Yes and no.
I will
around
say.
that time.
I will say
when they started trying to like undo the D-mails.
No, I'm gonna be honest. I checked out after like episode 2.
Christ, Kyle.
And it's not that I was like, oh, this is a terrible show, fucking drop it or something like that. I was just like, I'm not sold yet, and so I kept watching and watching and watching, and by the time I was getting to like episode 5 or 6 or something like that, I was like, I just don't like this. And one of the major reasons why is because I just could not get behind the main character. I was
really?
Yes, I was cringing every single second in the show whenever he's bringing up some delusion of his where he's talking about this or that. It's funny the first time. After that, it's very annoying, and I think what also didn't help is that I saw moments when this character honestly rang true, and I could see exactly what he's thinking, what he's talking about, and times whenever he matured up a little bit and he was like, no, listen, I need to talk to you about this. And I was like, that's fucking awesome. But then it also clued me in on the fact that he's an intelligent individual who completely understands social cues and is actually just refusing to do anything about that. To the point where it's actually affecting and hurting his relationships with other people at times. Because he's just oddballing it up over here whenever they needed information from him or like we're expecting some kind of answer. It just annoyed me. It was very cringy for me. And that's going to be, for anybody that's not seen this show, which we're getting into spoilers, so... or for somebody that has, that's just me personally. I understand that people are going to like this guy because he is a goofball, because he is mostly, for the most part, intelligent. It's just, for me personally, I just couldn't stand it. I really couldn't.
Quick question that's slightly related. Did you like Chunibyo?
Chunibyo?
Yeah.
I did. I had to pause it a lot. Cringe isn't my thing. Cringe really isn't. I straight up haven't finished with Tamate. I don't know if I ever will.
Well, no. What I'm more saying is, like, in a lot of ways, you could say that Kiyoma definitely has that sort of Chuni syndrome.
Oh, that's exactly what he had.
That's exactly what it is. He's an adult that has that Chuni syndrome. And I think that also bothered me is that it's understandable for a middle schooler or a high schooler to be a little bit obsessed about that, but for a full-grown fucking adult, I realize he's a dweeb, but, like, come on.
Oh, come on, he's being a goofball.
And I will say, I
that.
did like Chuni to an extent. Like I said, I definitely had to pause a lot. I'm not one for shows in which, like, it's actively making you cringe. I can't even watch The Office most times, just because I can't take it. And that definitely affected my watching. And that became one of the major reasons why I didn't like the first 11 episodes of the show, is because it's a lot of building up to a point. And I thought it laid a lot of seeds early very well. Especially whenever later, in the later half of the show, when he starts going back through the timelines and we start going back to these timelines that we're seeing in the first 11 episodes, it's doing a really good job of like, yes, all of this happened in this exact way and now he's changing it. And it was cool. But the first 11 episodes I had a lot of problems with, just because I didn't like the main character. So that made the pacing for me completely out of whack. It felt like I was just having to sit through this for 11 episodes until finally we got into something that was a little bit more serious. Or I can't remember the exact, I think it was the tail end of episode 11, right? Whenever they shoot Mayuri for the first time.
Let me scroll up here.
It's either, I think it's 11. 11 or
it's
10.
I don't think
it's 12. It's
12.
It's 12.
Okay.
Or maybe it's the end of 11 that it happened.
Yeah, I think it's the very last image you see in 11 that's supposed to be the big moment.
Yeah.
And then they finish it up in 12, which that scene was actually really good. I like that scene. And I also like their answer to how he managed to get back in time through that scene, because it called upon some of those earlier seeds that it had planted. The C4 mine that's actually just a smoke bomb. We'd already seen it gone off before, and it was a goof, and it was funny. I didn't think anything about it until all of a sudden they used it again. Except for this time in order to get away from the people that are shooting at them. And I was like, that's clever. And then you see all the other people involved in just like, either by accident or by happenstance, making sure he got to the time machine to go back in time. That was cool. That was clever. And that's those are the moments that I like about the show. But it was a mixture between, I didn't like the main characters, so the pacing was all fucked for me. And then the other thing that I didn't like about it is that it kind of turned me off a little bit whenever they pulled up a lot of the John Titor stuff and then straight up didn't do anything that the actual John Titor actually said. Because they don't. It's like John Titor believed in multi-world theory. These guys do not. John Titor believed that paradoxes are completely impossible. We solve most of the problems in the show by making paradoxes. And it's like that slightly turned me off, but I was like, whatever. If they want to readapt it for their own thing, that's fine. But a lot of the logic behind what it does for the time travel stuff was not... It felt very flip-floppy for me, because sometimes they would be like, yeah, no, there's multiple timelines, it works just like multi-world theory, and then all of a sudden they would switch it, and they're like, except for there's fixed points, and you can't change the fixed points no matter what, except for when you actually can. And I understand that it's hard to change the fixed points in the show, but, like, good fucking gosh, make up your mind what you want to do. it got annoying to me because it's like, this is the logic of the show, except for when it's not. Now we have this logic, except for when it's not. Now we have this logic. The time travel stuff to me just did not seem very consistent. And that bothered me, especially because the entirety of this show is based around the logic of its time travel. And I was not bought into it. I felt that it did a relatively good job overall, but it dropped the ball too many times for me to actually be like, yeah, no, I'm totally okay with this time travel stuff. I will say, as part of the references... Gosh, I've been talking for a while. Sorry. I will say, as far as the references that, Matt, you brought up, where it's doing a lot of references, it also did a lot of references to previous literature and movies and different things like that that have talked about time travel. Specifically, the incident when we after episode 11, when we get into the Mayuri segment, where every single action he does inevitably ends in her death. That was fucking awesome to me, because I'm a huge fan of H.G. Wells' The Time Machine. And that's the exact plot of The Time Machine. No matter what the person who invented the time machine does, he can't save his wife. And he has to watch his wife die over and over and over again in horrific ways and terrible ways. And every time he tries to save her, it just doesn't work. That was super cool. I thought that was a really neat segment, and I thought that how they approached it from a dramatic standpoint was really cool. I have my own gripes about particular scenes that I thought were a bit weird. Matt, we've talked about that, where like the little daughter pushes her into the train accidentally. It's like they oversold it for me, because it's like it's one of those things where like it was almost comical to me, because all these we have seen it twice before that point where she dies. She gets shot and then she gets hit by a car, and those were shocking. But they didn't seem random, because the person that killed her was the person sent out to kill her. But then we get to the subway scene where they have tried to avoid her, so they go to the subway, and then the little daughter, who we didn't see for the past episode and a half, comes out of nowhere, and she's like, "What's up, bitch?" and just knocks her into the train. I almost laughed, actually, which is kind of fucked up to say because somebody died, but like it was too random and just didn't make any sense. Like I felt like they should have prepped it with her being in the episode at some point, just so that we know, okay, she goes to the subway, or oh, she has to take the subway home today. That would have made a lot more sense to me from a plot perspective. And there's a couple of moments like that where I was like, I'm not sold on how you did it, but I think it was a good idea to do it. It was a lot of little things like that that just irked on me while I was watching the show.
That's a lot to dissect.
I know, and I'm sorry. I went on for a while.
Oh, man.
The main thing, though, is that there's a lot of smaller things in this show that I didn't like that really turned me off to it. And they kept, while it was doing a lot of things really well, the smaller things were doing too much of a detriment to the show for me personally. I mean, fuck, they even had a scene where he fucking rapes a girl, and it's in the show they're like, it's totally justified why he did that. It's not. It's absolutely not. It's completely retarded, and there was no reason for the scene in the first place. It's just bothers the fuck out of me whenever you have things like that. One, it was rape. Two, it was a scene that didn't need to be in there at all. There was truly no reason, and that shit bothers me. But yeah.
Okay. I don't even know where to start now.
Yeah, sorry.
Well,
it was a big rant.
I just told you not to do this, Kyle. Why'd you do this?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I will say, because you guys gave your scores on the show, overall, I actually kind of gave the show like a 6.57. I don't think it's a bad show, and I think it does a lot of things right. I just also felt like it did some things wrong, and the things that it did wrong were too much of a detriment for me personally.
Yeah, I understand. Before you say any more and continue on, I'm going to have to stop you right there.
I'm just trying to fill the awkward silence that we had going on. You go whenever you want to.
I understand. Okay, I want to talk about the main character for a little, just a small little bit, because we've talked just a tad bit about it already. We already talked about characters in the show.
Yeah.
Spin your tale about Kiyoma.
So, I love Kiyoma. I sometimes the things he do, he's a fucking baka, and the fact that I just said baka probably just discredited anything I'm going to say afterwards.
Please go to Eye of Fire. All right, continue.
Yeah, I'll go into Keikaku.
All right. But no, I think a lot of the motivations he has, like during the middle parts of the show, like during the Mayuri death arc, I guess it's really an arc, but I think there's a lot of like good. I really felt we saw him basically being broken, and I felt and I mean obviously why, understandably, and I thought that was really well done, and I really liked when the show tried to do things like that, just to kind of made me sympathize with him a lot more. Like, I really kind of felt what he was he was going through, and I was like, oh my god, like, he's acting, sometimes he would act a little irrationally, and I would be like, oh yeah, I would too, because I mean, look at all the shit you've just experienced.
Yeah, and
there's some serious wear and tear that he was going on through those, however many loops he went through.
And when it goes through that whole Mayuri arc, I felt for him. That was the first time. That was that first time in the show where I was like, yeah, no, I feel for you, dude. Like, I legitimately was on board. He dropped a lot of the goofy stuff because the whole thing got a little bit serious on him out of nowhere. And I mean, he was crying in the back of a car tied up during a kidnapping. I honestly was like, oh shit! Like, while watching that, I was like, oh gosh, like, you could really feel how fucked up his life had just become. Oh, it was good. It was a good moment.
Yeah, and the latter half of the show has a lot of those.
Yeah.
The first half of the show where he's mostly goofy, and some of that goofiness transcends into the latter half of the show too. I just really liked the goofiness and the just over how it was so over the top for me that I was just like, is he even serious right now? Like, this is not the time for this. It was just funny to me, as in, like, why are you doing that right now? This is not the time.
Yeah.
What are you doing? But I know that's probably the same things kind of you were thinking, but I thought it was just funny. The fact that it was just the way it was.
Yeah.
He's just goofy as it is.
And like I said, that comes down to my opinion. It got to a point where it was cringy for me, and at that point, I tuned out. But for anybody else that's watching the show, they might enjoy it. They might think, hey, he's just a fucking dumbass goofball, whatever. And they enjoy it.
Just a dumbass fucking
goofball. It was just my opinion. It hurt me, but for other people, even the people that I talked to at work, like that guy that said, it was a shit show, but I absolutely love it. That was one of the things that he enjoyed about it. He was like, oh, he's such an idiot, but I love the main character. That it worked for him.
Yeah.
Different strokes for different folks.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, the second point you made, which there's several smaller points you also made in that segment, about the time travel.
Yeah.
Personally, for me, I'm going to state my personal opinion first, and then we can discuss about the actual what you said. For me, I'm not going to say I didn't care about the loopholes that kind of were there, or these or the problems. I guess I can call them problems, even though I don't really see them as such, because I think that it didn't really matter to me that there was problems, because the other stuff was just so good. But I think, and I guess that's my point, is that all the time travel, like small things that may have bothered you, I didn't really have any expectations for time travel to begin with in this show. So when it started happening, I mean, I generally dislike time travel stories because it gets freaking hard to understand.
And you got to be real good with your writing, otherwise, yeah, time travel is one of those that you got to be on point, because if you slip up, people figure it out and they start to have an issue with it.
Yeah, it's very hard to write without like having some kind of issue with loopholes and stuff.
And that's why a lot of people typically like writing the single time travel thing, like Back to the Future, where it's just a single timeline and you can go back and forth on the timeline. If you change something in the past, it changes the future. People like that because it's a lot easier to write, and sometimes it can be a little bit more interesting for your audience because it's a lot easier to understand. This show didn't want to do that, and I applaud them for doing something complicated and doing a reasonably good job with it.
Yeah, I
I just didn't like the loopholes.
Yeah, and that's fine. Like I understand why. It's not like I don't understand that those are there, and those are definitely, something that could bother somebody.
Yeah, I mean, off the podcast, we talked for like what, 3 hours one night.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. And I guess that's going to come down to the individual as well. I mean, most things when it comes to liking or disliking a show do.
Yeah, of course. I just think that like the plot holes to me didn't matter because I was just so invested already that if there was a plot hole that, by the way, I didn't really even recognize any of the plot holes because they already explained it really confusingly. So I was just already kind of a little confused. So
yeah, and I think, Matt, we had talked about this too. The translation for this show is like the official subs that they put on the DVD version that we have. It wasn't that good. I don't know. I felt like the translation was definitely off. Especially because like the characters would be doing something on screen, or they would be writing or drawing an illustration to explain their point on screen, and then what they're talking about as far as the subs go is completely different sometimes.
Well, I wouldn't say it's completely different. I would just it's just worded confusingly that like if you're not like looking at the picture and then looking at the subtitles, if you're like looking at the subtitles and then trying to look at the picture, it just doesn't work. It's the fact that they were both present at the same time that it was kind of confusing.
Yeah, you had to like pause it, go back a little bit, like, I'm sorry, what did they say?
Yeah, you kind of had to like think about it, which you really shouldn't have to do for subtitles. You really shouldn't have to go back and figure it out.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's a whole different issue. Well, it's not, but it
has to do with
very small.
It has to do with the time travel thing, but at the same time, it's a smaller issue on top of what we were talking about.
Yeah, of course. So I just think that to me, the time travel stuff it didn't really matter too much. I was invested in the show for a completely different reason, and the fact that I was just like, sometimes, I didn't fully understand the time. Excuse me. Wow.
Oh God.
Oh.
Please don't die.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Man down.
It's fine. I'm still here. I think that, especially in the latter parts of the show where the time travel gets a little confusing, I think that it served its purpose to me. I got a good story out of it from the time travel aspects, and the fact that they missed they made a little error with the time travel gimmick was not a big deal.
Right, and that's kind of what I was saying in the beginning. It hooked me hard enough that I was able to get into a pretty solid suspension of disbelief. Like, okay, all right, like I understand that not everything that you're saying here is immediately clicking to me like, okay, yeah, that totally makes sense. But it's like, okay, I trust you enough from what you've done so far to let you go on with this and see where you take the story. And I don't feel like the show betrayed me in that sense. Yeah, I still feel like for what it was trying to do, it handled its narrative very well.
I would say the way that I think about it in my head, I guess, is like the difference between having the proper screwdriver or not. It's like you can get a screw into wherever it needs to be with a larger bit head or something like that sometimes. It's just going to slip out every now and then, but you'll still get it there, and and when you finish, you still have your work finished, and it probably looks fine. If that's a weird metaphor, I apologize. But like,
that makes sense.
That's kind of how I feel about it. It's like the story got to where it needed to be, and it worked. It's just it slipped up a lot for me personally, as far as the time travel stuff goes. Because I enjoy time travel stories, and I get invested in them. That's one of the things that I thought was so interesting about not anime but Rick and Morty. Was Rick and Morty does a very good job with multiple timelines and traveling between different dimensions and all that other thing. Does an incredible job with it. And so, like, I always appreciate whenever they do a good job with it. On the anime side of things, it's like, was it the snail arc of Monogatari second season?
Yeah.
Yeah, whenever they end up traveling to an alternate dimension, I thought they did a great job with it, and I really enjoyed that story on its own within that great series. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I think because I like those, and because I feel like I know how these different styles and ideas about time travel work, it bothered me whenever this was kind of like grinding up against me a little bit with how they were trying to explain things. Um, but it worked. I mean, I still enjoyed the show. I thought it was a good show.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We haven't really touched on, like, and I basically don't really have to, but it was just, it's interesting because we haven't really even talked about like the last 3 episodes because they're just so, I guess, so different from the rest of the show. The show progresses interestingly in the fact that like different parts of the show, like if I showed someone episode 4 and then I showed someone episode 10 and then 16 and then like 23, like it's almost like, is this even the same show kind of thing?
Yeah, they're so tonally different from each other, like completely, which was cool actually, because like you could have the lighthearted moments and then the not so lighthearted moments. But yeah, I agree with you. Those last 3 episodes. Are we including like the kind of like extra one onto it? Episode 25.
I mean,
Episode 25.
Okay.
I mean, we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt that it was like it changed dramatically, especially because it had been getting really dark for a while there, and then they finally kind of figured out this nice balance for the last few episodes, where it's still dark and there's still blood on the floor and all this other shit, but it also has this sense of hope to it that's like really really cool.
Yeah. Just reaching the whole Steins Gate kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that Steins Gate was actually a thing, and I was screaming inside, like of course it was going to be an actual thing, but it's still, I was sort of like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I knew you were going to do this, but you really did this.
The main character the entire time, just for reference, the main character was like, Steins Gate, it's the power of Steins Gate,
To explain the time travel stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and it was just like a bullshit excuse. He was just like making shit up again.
Yeah, and all the characters even called him on it. They're like, the fuck is Steins Gate, you ass? And he's like, it's a thing.
It's a thing. The organization's trying to get to it.
Yeah.
Hell Psi Congru, all that. And then like near the end we find out it's a real thing. I would have just loved to have seen his expression when he's like, wait, that's a real thing?
Yeah.
I mean, of course it was a real thing.
I knew it all along. Yeah. And I thought that the end to this series was fucking fantastic. That was probably my favorite moment in the show too.
In the series being episode 24 or 25?
Episodes 23, 24, and 25.
Okay, so just like the last bits.
Yes, because
yeah, absolutely.
Because you start getting into like a lot of the romance stuff finally starts paying out, and then you also get this fixing the errors of the previous time, and then on top of that, I felt like the way that they approached it, as well as the twists with like Kirisu's father and different things like that, were handled very well, especially because some of that had been hinted at before and we just never got a payout for it, and then all of a sudden it comes full circle and you're like, oh shit.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or yeah,
absolutely.
or like how CERN actually managed to make the time machine in the first place because they stole it from the person who made the time machine for the nerds. Like, that's great. That's actually really clever. I like that idea.
Yeah, and just like the fact that it does come full circle back to the very first episode and showing how events, began to transpire is really satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, like, I feel like that's a good word for it. It's satisfying to see, and that's how this clicks all into place. Okay.
Can I say what one of my more satisfying moments in those few episodes was?
Sure.
It was a very
No,
small.
you can't.
Oh, okay. Anyways, moving on. It was actually, it might have been in 22. Whenever he finally reverses the last D-mail after this arc that went on for don't know how long. I want to say like 6 episodes or something like that.
Just several episodes.
Yeah. He reverses that last D-mail, and we get one of the first shots of the show. Was the fisheye lens on his forehead at his eyes, and he's like surprised and motionless because his brain's being transported back in time, and that's exactly what happened after the first email was sent. It shows him in the lab, fisheye lens on his forehead, that same exact pose, and I was like, and now we come full circle. I was like, that's a nice little callback to the previous scene.
Right.
It was nice. I appreciated that.
Yeah, the callbacks that they made just to the first couple episodes and the twists that they threw at us, that captivated me. And I used the word captivated. I wish I really didn't use that word now. Just in context of the show. But it really did, though. Like, I really felt I connected with not connected, that's not the right word, but I felt like the twists that were thrown at us were amazing.
Yeah,
they were just done spectacularly.
Yeah.
You got there, Matt.
Yeah, I got there after a couple of different word choice switches. Captivating would have been a good one, but, then I thought, Mayuri was, captain.
But no, yeah, I think that's really what helped me change. I was gonna rate this show pretty low until like we get to like the last 6 episodes. That kind of pulled me through because I was not happy with a lot of the other stuff, but then the show took off and got real fucking good. Yeah, and it kind of made up for a lot of the stumbles along the way, or at least it made me forget about them for a while, and I have to appreciate the show for doing that. And then the OVA episode, I don't know if it's an OVA, but it's like the one-off episode at the tail end just to kind of fully finish up everything. It was sweet and endearing. That was a nice episode.
I think it's technically an OVA.
It's a special/OVA thing, so yeah.
Okay.
You can consider it like that, yeah.
Because the way that they had it end on episode 24, I was like, solid. That's good. That's a great way to leave it open-ended and let you think about things. And then even with the OVA episode, they still left it relatively open-ended. They're still stuck in the middle of the desert. It's like they left a lot of things that they didn't need to answer unanswered intentionally so that you can picture where this show or where these people's lives will go after this. And I liked that. But on top of that, it also gave us some good conclusion to the romance, to where Suzu came from, to some other stuff. I thought that was very well done.
Yeah, I definitely think so.
Yeah, especially because there's a lot of other shows where I'm like, I'm not a fan of your one-off episode. That was a good one-off.
Yeah, it made it feel like super complete.
Yeah.
Right, and it's not like we got a one-off episode that was a Hot Springs episode or something.
Or like a going to the beach swimwear episode.
Could you imagine like one of those in this show? It would just be fucking Kyoma like dicking off the entire time.
Yeah, my God.
Jesus.
And turns out it was just an alternative timeline or something. That would be like something a generic anime would do.
We did kind of get that towards the end whenever he goes on the date episode. That very much was a one-off episode that they added in there solely for the purpose of, we've been really dark for the past 6 episodes. Why don't we make a happy one? It kind of bothered me because it didn't need to exist at all, but whatever. It was an okay episode.
I mean, it didn't.
It didn't at all. He even said at the beginning that all he had to do was ask her for the fucking number for the pager. And then he's like, fuck it, we'll fuck around for a day. That's what he did.
I mean, if I was him and I saw all that dark shit, I'd be just like, yeah, let's just fuck around a little bit.
It needed a bit of a tonal breakup.
And I was fine with the tonal breakup. I don't know, the way they approached it plot-wise, it was just like, we could just keep the plot going, but I guess not. And I was like,
I mean, I feel like that you just had a lot of issues with that character in general, so...
I did, but he's a fucking dumbass. There's even the point whenever he has to send the email from, what was her name, that Flying Fingers or whatever. The one that
Shining Finger.
Shining Finger. Oh yeah, the
Moeka.
the G Gundam
fucking
reference.
G-Gundam reference.
Yeah. Moeka like went fucking balls to the wall crazy, and he was holding her back on the door, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I can just look at the last email sent or last message sent, and that's the email, and I just have to input that." And then he, without saying anything else, puts the phone down, lets the door break open, and then puts himself on top of a girl and starts making out with her while she's resisting. He makes a lot of really dumb decisions in this show, and I did not agree with all of them. But anyways,
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Go ahead.
anyways,
I just said fair point.
Oh,
That's all.
overall, show was pretty solid. I have my issues and opinions, but show was solid.
just I'll make a couple of comments on the last couple episodes.
Yeah.
I wanna
Chase your
talk.
buzz.
I'm just gonna straight out say this because it's not relevant to anything else I'm going to say because it's of the littlest critical value, I guess.
The Oopa was fucking adorable.
No, but that was somehow even less meaningful than what I was going to say.
I'm just saying.
So, I mean, you're not wrong. So, I don't know. Like there was the end of one of those episodes. What is it?
Well, what happens, and then I can tell you which episode it is. Most likely.
Okay. Oh yeah, that would actually be a good thing. Thank you.
Yep.
So it was just the fact that when he reveals to Kurisu that basically he has to go to the other timeline where she's dead.
Yeah.
Like, and he has to leave her, and all the the romantic shit happens.
Yeah.
Like that moment, just ripped me apart.
Yeah.
I was devastated.
And I thought they treated it really well too, because before that we saw him on the roof not wanting to make that decision. He just couldn't do it because he had to decide between, do I want the love of my life to die, or do I want the friend that I've had since a child to die? And he didn't want to decide. He wanted some answer that would fix it, but he couldn't decide on, should I let one die or the other. And then the moment that you talk about, immediately after that, she's fucking wrecked for the rest of the episode. I agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
That was good. That was good.
Yeah, and then the whole when he time travels back to, I guess when he finally makes the decision that he's done all this work to save Mayuri and he has to just do it. He's gonna find a way to fix both timelines. Or whatever.
And Kurisu even in a very heartbreaking moment says it's okay. You can give up on me to save her. And I was like, it was very sad. But when we finally makes the decision.
Mm-hmm. And then and when he's time traveling back, there's there's the transition where she bolts back into the room, and she has that one Kurisu. I mean, she bolts back as he's time traveling, and she's saying something, and it was just oh my god, it destroyed me.
Yeah, it was hard.
That just ripped me apart.
I don't want to say anything. Okay.
I mean, you might have not liked it, but
no, I thought the scene was good, and I thought how they approached it was good as well. I was just confused why that was her last words, where she says "I love you," because she already said it, earlier in that episode. So I was confused why it was a big moment whenever she says it again.
I think it was the way I looked at it, I thought it was just her finally admitting to herself, so she come to the self-realization that maybe she didn't want to have him she had this inner desire that she wanted Kiyoma to stay, but she couldn't say it because obviously for obvious reasons, because he's already done all this shit. That would be selfish. And then I think she just wanted that selfish desire to get out, saying, "Hey,
I feel
like it really worked."
It did. I feel like it would have tore me up more if instead of saying "I love you," because she had already stated that before, if she said, "Don't leave me," or something like that, and you're like, "Oh fuck!" Really drop the ball, right there, and he's back in time already, and there's nothing he can do. That would have really killed me.
Yeah, that scene was really good. I really liked that. That's the core essence of what this show is to me, is those moments like that.
That just break you.
Yeah, that just absolutely kill me. They just break. my soul. Also, did you guys notice what?
Just quoting some angsty music from the middle school era. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
I won't.
All right. Also, did you notice that after he shifts back into the timeline in the alpha timeline or the beta one, whichever one is, we're not in the majority of the time, whichever one that is. That's the alpha one, I think. And when that change happens, when he hits the divergent point, is what I'm talking about. When he hits that point, the OP actually slightly changes. I don't know if any of you caught that, or if you guys even like watched the opening at all. By the way, the opening's fucking amazing.
Wait. What?
In what way does it change? Because I'm gonna be honest, I skipped through most of the OPs after a certain point.
Oh man, did you skip through the EDs too?
No, I caught the one of them. I don't know if any of the others changed. But I caught because sometimes they would keep playing stuff while the song was going on, and they would just go back to the show. But
I have a bad habit of plowing through OPs and EDs.
I'm just not. I'm not.
Unless,
it's like I look at the little preview scrubber, and then I see like, oh, okay, the OP or the ED's done, and then I skip to that. But I did catch the ED that one time whenever it ends, right before the final arc, where it suddenly starts like doing the weird filter thing as if going to static, and then all of a sudden it switches over and Okabe Kiyoma gets the phone call, and I was like, that's clever, that's nice.
Yeah. The ED there, I'm going to talk about the ED too. The ED itself, that moment right there, and actually, I usually just tab out in the ED because I know what they do in these EDs is because sometimes like they'll pull shit like this where it actually becomes like part of the show where and as soon as I started hearing like static noises, I was like, what the fuck? And then I tabbed back in.
Yeah, did you think that it was like, oh no, the player's breaking on me?
Yeah, I thought I thought that's what I thought it was. I was like, what the heck is going on? Like, am I getting some weird like static feedback in my headset or something? And then I looked at it and I was like, oh no, it's doing the thing. And I thought that was really cool.
I like whenever shows do that. Kill la Kill did that one too, where it like first starts off with like all of a sudden the one character from Kill la Kill that's in the ED, all of a sudden they start switching to that really evil character, and then she just like slices through it and smiling creepily with like really terrifying music. It's kind of clever whenever people can play with their with the format in that way.
Yeah, like I mean, I realized pretty quickly that they started playing some things after the ED, so like I didn't necessarily listen through. Like I'd get to the tab and then just like skip ahead to see if they had anything afterwards. But yeah, like I don't know, like an OP or an ED really has to like catch me with the music or something for me to stick through it.
Yeah, I'll watch it. I'll watch it
Honkai or something.
Right. I'll watch it once or twice for like a 1 core, and probably like 4 or 5 times for a 2 core. But for the most part, I skip it unless it's Kobayashi, because I'm not skipping that. It's impossible.
Yeah, there are some really good openings in anime. I personally like the openings and endings. The endings kind of less unless it's a really good ending. The OPs I'll watch every time. EDs I'll tab out most of the time, just admittingly. In this show, though, the OP, when it gets to that divergent point change, it actually changes both visually and lyrically. They actually use like a different verse from the same song, and it changes and what's really cool about this is that, well, the visual changes aren't prevalent at all. But the lyrical changes actually have to do with like each timeline. Like the first opening that we hear, if you actually go through the lyrics and kind of like interpret them, it's all about this. It's all about like Kiyoma trying to like grasp this. He's basically talking about his experiences in trying to save Mayuri and the kind of like pain he goes through as he's, and at least that's what I interpreted from the lyrics. And he kind of his desire to save her, even though he has to go through all this pain. He's like, I'll keep doing it. Like, I'll do it as many times as it takes. Like, that's kind of like the first opening. So when the second opening shifts, it kind of talks about his desires to, like, how he's just going to rip apart, like, everything, all these scientific theories and all this stuff, because he's looking for Steins Gate at that point. He's looking for a way just to defy all the laws of the universe and just tackle, like, trying to get the best of both worlds, basically.
Yeah, and save his friends. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And in the second verse of the opening was, which is also the second opening, that talks about that. It's talking about, I'm going to do this. No one can stop me. I'm going to find a way to do this. I don't care about, any how smart these people think they are, these scientists, or any theories that might disprove what I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Which actually comes up in a plot point in the show where they're like, that's impossible. That doesn't make any sense. But that's what that second OP was about. And the way they just used those to kind of like match the show, I thought was really cool.
Yeah, no, I dig that.
Yeah, I just thought it was a really small thing that I was just like, yes, that is what an opening should do. It should just...
Yeah, I think it's perfect. Cool whenever an opening or an ending is not just a song or something to tack on the opening credits and the ending credits. Whenever they actually use it as a tool and as a device in the format of the show to further the plot or further the theme of the show. That's really cool. I didn't know about that, and I think that's, or at least to that extent, and I think that's super awesome.
Yeah, I love it when shows make the OP just more than a filler block.
Yeah.
Or the ED, and even, yeah. So I like things like the OP and the ED in this show, for example, and other shows, as we've mentioned. It just kind of fills the gap, and it makes it part of the show.
For sure.
Well, anything else? Because I could keep going, but I'm not going to.
I mean, I'm sure we could keep going for a while. I just... we need an episodic breakdown of the series.
No, we don't.
I mean, we could.
You guys can. I'm not going to.
But...
I have stayed civil on this podcast, and I want to keep it that way.
Okay. I mean, I'm done. Like,
okay.
I don't have anything else to say. Oh, yeah, I'm done. So.
Yeah, there's nothing else major that's coming to mind for me. So.
Toot-a-boo.
Well, cool. I guess,
Toot-a-boo.
Toot-a-doo. I guess see everybody on the next podcast. Boy.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.